So let it be written. So let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. Today, we're going to talk about spicing up combat. We'll start with players first, and then we'll roll into game masters. James, how do you spice up your combat?
So specifically based on that wording, I think a really nice smoked paprika just sprinkled over right before you roast it. No, for me as a player, I think I addressed a problem that I have, which is I can sometimes get bored during combat because, in my opinion, usually say level 3 character in D&D, depending on what the GM throws at you, you're kind of gonna do the same things. You have your big thing, you have your slightly smaller thing that you do next. Like it's kind of all set up depending on who you are and what the situation is. If I have a good sword, I'm going to hit you with my good sword. So what I try to do to make combat more interesting for me, and it kind of bleeds into everyone else, is continue role playing during the combat. So instead of focusing on just what I'm doing, trying to tie it to whoever we're fighting, keep the story going, whether it's just as simple as narrating something that's happening next to someone else's character to kind of bring them into it. Or if I'm yelling out, oh, this must be the guy with the amulet, making it a role-playing moment instead of saying, as a player rather than a player character, oh, this guy's probably the one with the amulet. Make it a story moment while you're rolling 2d6 to sneak attack or whatever.
So for me, in terms of like player advice, I think it seems very basic, but if we plan on the game master being prepared, how do you prep as a game master? I think as a player, you should be prepared. It's very simple. I think that you should take either the day before or the day of, block off 10 minutes to read over your character sheet and refresh yourself on who you are, what you have in your inventory, what your abilities are. This seems like a really small thing. I'm like, it's inconsequential, but it's really easy. And I think the juice you get from this squeeze is a lot. Because then, when you're in combat, it is not, what can I do? Oh, hey, everybody, I forgot. You need to add, you get a D4, you add to this thing or that thing. And it's no more of that. It's more, you have laid your tools out. You know what you have available to you. And when the game master hits you with a situation, I have the perfect tool for the job. And that just makes things way smoother, and I think it makes it more fun because you feel competent.
Yeah, so for me, there's a lot of, I think, attention that gets put, rightfully so, on like combat flow and like how quickly the momentum of combat can kind of move from one person to another and keep the energy level up. It's very easy for combat to drag if you're not very careful. And while a lot of that comes down to the GM, as a player, there are a lot of things you can do to kind of take responsibility for how you use your own turn, kind of make sure that you keep the energy of combat going. And one of my favorite ways to do that is to, for one, whenever it gets to your turn, already know in advance what you're going to do, assuming that nobody disrupts it. So, okay, when it's my turn, I'm going to cast this spell on this guy. And then to kind of even take that one step further, I like to just pre-roll all my combat effects before it even gets to my turn. So, for example, I'm playing a level 5 wizard. I know on my turn, I'm going to cast Fireball. So while the previous person is going, I'll take my 8d6, I'll roll them, I'll count them up, total it. So then when it gets to my turn, I can just say, all right, I cast Fireball. That's a DC 14 dex save, or else they take 32 damage or 16 if they succeed. And then when I can kind of have that all ready, it gives me more time to kind of do what James was mentioning, of like to add in those role play moments, to kind of take a moment to describe how the spell looks, the impact, the emotion that my character is feeling as a result of the combat. Because I don't have to sit there and like, I need to get all my D6s. I need to roll them. Let me count them up real quick. Sorry, what was his dex save? Okay, well, that if you kind of already have all the math and all the rolling done right when it gets to you, you can use your turn to build the momentum and the impact of the combat going into the situation, rather than having to use all that time to figure out logistics. And it kind of helps to keep a flow going. And then when you can just kind of keep the combat going like that, it makes it a lot more faster, a lot more energetic.
Yeah, I super dig that. And I'm that guy, by the way, who doesn't do that. I'm like, well, let me see here. I guess it's 4d8. And so Now, in terms of GM tips, I'll jump in and say that to me, there's a lot of things that you can do in a combat. And like you say, it's all about the flow. It's all about kind of keeping things at a certain pace. And so I think one of the things I've noticed about 5th edition D&D specifically is if you have this sort of lopsided initiative where it's like, okay, bad guys, good guys. The good guys tend to just trounce. It's like they wreck. They usually roll over stuff. So what I've done is, and I'm warning you that this is a very intuitive kind of thing. I don't have some sort of mechanic. I just base it off of the creature that I'm using. I do this thing called ceaseless threats. What does that mean? It means that I will add other things that do damage, whether it's environmental threats or other like minor creatures or effects and things like that, and I will roll them into the initiative order. So if they're fighting goblins, I might actually give like, I might call it a goblin berserker. And I'm like, oh, hey, it's the berserker gets one of these little ceaseless threats, and I'll just make someone roll a saving throw against this berserker's huge blade. Where's that in the rules? It's not. It's just like giving minor like little tweaks so that throughout the whole combat, everyone feels like they're involved. In my opinion, players like to take damage. They want to feel like they got beat up. They want to feel like it was deadly, it was dangerous. This involves everyone. So what I'll do is I'll take that person who maybe hasn't gotten any action in a little while, and I'll be like, okay, the vines of Zamon's living jungle come lashing out at you, and sometimes I'll just pop them with a D4 of damage. You got to be careful with this, though. You don't want to drop somebody over that. That feels really cheap. But I try to keep track of everyone's hit points so that I know I'm like, boom, all right, now they're at like 36. But it feels good when that person gets lashed, and I'll be like, narrate what it's like when that vine wraps around your neck and cuts you. They're usually super into it, like, oh, wow, it's not even my turn, and I'm doing stuff. So that is kind of my thing of, I just do this, these ceaseless threats, these little things. Roll a saving throw against this crazy wind that's pushing. To keep it fair, as I say, I put them on a certain initiative order. So on initiative 16, the Goblin Berserker will go. On initiative 4, the wind will blow. And people just tend to dig it. Bonus tip, as a game master, roll your players' death saves and don't tell them what the result is. That might be polarizing in terms of what it is, but you will never see a cleric scramble. When you're like, oh, okay, it's cool, guys. I got one. It's fine. We're good. I like to put this sense of strange urgency of like, I don't know what it's like. I'm the game master. I roll it. I'm like, okay, next. They're like, well, they don't know if they're going to die or live. It's the coolest thing. And so try that. That's my second little bonus tip.
And I think that a lot of the fun, certainly for me, in combats, in role-playing games, especially when it's not what I would consider a plot combat, right? So you're looking for treasure and you break into this tomb and there's skeletons. They're animated for whatever reason, but they're not the ones with the amulet. They're not the ones that are the bad guy. They're not, this is just a combat because that's part of the game. The important thing to remember, though, is in my experience, a lot of times people have their best things and they use all their best things. And then they go, okay, so we rest. And I mean, I do this in video games. I'm like, all right, I can find a spot to rest. Okay, I got all my best spells back. Let's do the next guys. So as a GM, I think to dovetail nicely from what Tim said, don't be afraid to let your players hang on to their damage a little while. When they go, oh, okay, so we fought the skeletons. Can we rest here? It's a little too dangerous to rest here. You might have to push on further to find a better spot. Okay, wait, so you mean I don't have my level 4 spell slot available? You mean I don't have my, my action surge? The thing is, just like players can enjoy getting hit, they enjoy their characters living and existing, that strain of not knowing whether or not they failed or succeeded their death saving throw, that all kind of carries into the strain of not knowing, knowing rather that they don't have this or that ability to get them out and what are they going to do. And I feel like it often brings out the player's ingenuity and they discover their characters in a different way than if you would let them rest and let them use Witch Bolt or whatever their big thing is on the next guys and the next guys and so on.
Yeah, so I'm going to pull back a little bit towards logistics again, just because again, I think it's like one of the most important things to a good combat is keeping a powerful flow. So I'm going to talk about that on the GM side of things too. One of my favorite things to do for initiatives to make sure that I can keep track of everyone's turn and make sure that everyone's kind of prepared for when it's their turn to act is before the game even happens, if I know a combat's going to happen, I'll take all the enemies, I'll roll their initiatives beforehand and put them in a list already. So that way, when I have to ask the players for their initiatives, I can just slot them in between the monsters on the list of where it's already going to be. And then I'll take that list with like initiative numbers and everybody's names, including names for the enemies if I can, and take that list and copy paste it because I play mostly online, but you could do this in person too. And then I'll put that initiative list publicly into the chat of the game that I'm playing in, so everybody can see whose turn is after whose. So that way, if I'm a player, I can see like, okay, so the monster's gonna go, then Tim's gonna go, and then it's my turn. So then, okay, Tim's finishing up his turn. That means it's about to be my turn, which means I'm gonna be ready. And it allows everybody to be prepared, so when their turn comes around, they're ready for it. There's no reason for them not to kind of have an idea of what they're going to do because they're able to kind of follow along in the exact order of the combat. And as a GM, it helps a lot easier for me to kind of keep a flow between things of like, okay, so Tim, you've just seen this monster shoot these spikes off at James's character. He's got him really on the ropes. What do you do now, having just seen that? And you can kind of keep a sort of connecting line between each person's turn of like, you've just seen this person do this. Now it's your turn. What do you do? And because they kind of know in advance that that's coming, it allows them to be prepared. And then they can kind of continue on that flow on their own of like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And then, okay, James, you've just seen Tim do this to the monster who just shot you with these spikes. What are you going to, you can kind of build this through line between each step-by-step event, and everybody can stay on top of it and kind of keep the flow of combat moving.
So in the comments, I want you to put what your tips are. What's that thing you do as a player or a game master just to spice up combat, make it go more smoothly, just have more fun with it. I can't wait to see because there are so many cool homebrew rules and different things. So we're Tabletop Terrors. We're all about fun, creativity, and RPGs. If you like any of those things, consider subscribing and then hit the notification bell so you'll know when we come out with new videos. As always, we're going to wrap things up with a Tabtarian toast.
May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
May you conquer everything you undertake.
Sláinte.
All right, Jeff, you're up for a title. If you want to, I'm never going to force anybody to do it.
Good on the noise making right there. You got it in the bottle to unscrew conspicuously during recording.
Hey Jeff, do something recorded real quick. I'm just gonna fiddle around with my Legos.
I know. I was trying so. I was like, oh, I want a sip of this, and I was trying. Could you hear me unscrewing it?
Yeah.
I was trying so to keep it so quiet.
Like very obviously. Like,
it felt like you were putting it next to your mic for Foley.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you like specifically were like. There we go. Gotta take a sip.
Oh no. Sorry. Yeah, I'm done now.
No, it's fine. It's just making sure.